Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to this Duke 100 Centennial Event honoring our alumnus, David Robinson. I'm Professor Trina Jones, and on behalf of myself, Giovanni Martinez, and the Center on Law, Race, and Policy, thank you for being here. We are especially pleased to also welcome members of Mr. Robinson's family, Wileen Robinson, Rhonda, and Dwight Kirk. Thank you so much for being here. Today's conversation is the first in a series of events that the Center on Law, Race, and Policy, in collaboration with other units on campus, will be hosting to delve into the topic of democracy and rights. These events will examine the ways in which democratic governance is interwoven with and often dependent upon other rights and freedoms, including a living wage, freedom from violence, reproductive autonomy, and access to affordable housing, employment, healthcare, and critically, education. I'm honored to introduce our speakers. In 1961, David Robinson made history when he enrolled at Duke Law. With fellow law student Walter T. Johnson, Jr., and divinity student R.L. Speaks, he was one of the first 3 Black students to enroll at Duke, just months after the university's Board of Trustees voted to desegregate its graduate and professional schools. This was 2 years before the widely and justifiably heralded first 5 integrated Duke's undergraduate campus. Mr. Robinson's enrollment changed the university forever, setting Duke on a path to becoming more inclusive and forging the foundation for the community that we enjoy today. Mr. Robinson graduated from Howard University with highest honors and was persuaded by Elvin Jack Laddie, Dean of Duke Law, to attend Duke. Mr. Robinson had a distinguished career following his graduation from Duke Law in 1964. He served as an attorney for the Federal Reserve before accepting a position at Xerox Corporation in Rochester, New York. In 1969, Mr. Robinson discovered inaccuracies in a company survey indicating that Black employees were happy with their positions and salaries. In response, he helped organize and served as executive director of the Concerned Association of Rochester, a nonprofit organization dedicated to the elimination of discrimination at Xerox. In 1978, Mr. Robinson became senior counsel of Xerox. Note his activities, and then senior counsel for Xerox operations on the West Coast. After retiring from Xerox, Mr. Robinson became the first general counsel for the 11th Judicial Circuit of Florida. We are deeply honored that Mr. Robinson agreed to join us today, as he is now the only surviving member of this historic group of 3 men who first integrated Duke University. He is living history. We're also fortunate that our own highly esteemed and beloved Professor Timothy Lovelace, the John Hope Franklin Research Scholar and Professor of Law, has agreed to lead today's discussion. Thank you, Mr. Robinson, for being here, and thank you, Professor Lovelace.
Thank you so much for the warm introduction. Thank you so much, Mr. Robinson, for being here, and the Robinson family. We have many great sponsors for this event, but I want to just flag a couple of people in particular. The law school librarians and the university archivists have been immensely helpful to us, as well as research assistants, Jasmine Henson and Jalen Small. We've compiled just a tremendous amount of information that we want to share with the law school community in the coming weeks as it relates to the desegregation of Duke University and specifically Duke Law School. But before we get to the desegregation of Duke Law School, let's go to your childhood, Mr. Robinson.
Well, it's going back 86 years, so you have to bear with me.
Yes, sir.
I'm the 7th child of a family of 9. And I was born in Miami, Florida, just north of downtown Miami. I had a wonderful childhood. The community was a segregated community called Overtown. That is the designation that was given by the authorities as well as the residents themselves. It was a vibrant community. It was like a village. My neighbors could chastise me if they saw me doing something wrong, and I'm certainly grateful for that. I was fortunate enough growing up to serve, have different types of jobs, which really looking back, retroactively looking back, I'm just delighted that I had those experiences. For example, during the summers, I did labor, hard labor work. I hid my age, and I was hired to do pretty heavy labor work. I also had the experience growing up of being a working in a print shop, which was a rich experience because it learned me the importance of words and composition. I sold newspapers. I found out that I could have a captured audience in a hospital that was about a mile from my home. And I would sell my allotment of newspapers within an hour. Because I just had to walk about, 7 or 8 blocks, and I was done. I had done my allotment. So I had a rich childhood, very rich childhood. One thing I'd like to point out is that my father unfortunately died in 1947. My mother was left with there were 7 children in the house, and she had to go out for the first time to work. The point I want to make here is that the Social Security Administration, you've heard of Social Security, you're young people, so it really doesn't interest you. But for Social Security, my family would have been in abject poverty. Each one of the children received a check each month from the Social Security Administration. I want to make that point because of the current, I don't want to be politically active here, but the current administration, unfortunately, is attacking the Social Security program, and I'm living testimony of the importance of that program to particularly underserved communities. I'm sorry, I went into many different directions, but
Absolutely. No, this is great. Thinking about, so you have this childhood in segregated Florida. You graduate and then attend Howard University. Howard University has this sort of storied history. You're there at a really pivotal time of the civil rights movement. What did Howard do for you in terms of thinking about your possibilities professionally, personally, politically?
That is a great question, and I love to talk about it. My high school, and I'm still active with the Alumni Association. 70 years later, I'm still active with the Alumni Association. Booker T. Washington High School was one of the few high schools in South Florida. Students came, parents made a sacrifice, African-American parents made a sacrifice in West Palm Beach to send their kids to Booker T. Washington High School. It was really, really something. The faculty there, I must say, a lot of them were well trained from institutions like Columbia, NYU, and they really prepared us once the Brown decision in 1954 was announced by a unanimous Supreme Court. They emphasized to each of us that you're going to have to be competitive in this upcoming new world. And boy, were they right. A lot of us did take those lessons to heart, that encouragement to heart. And so I was very interested in furthering my education. And I was fortunate enough to be accepted at Howard in early '57. And they offered me a scholarship, and I was fortunate enough to go there. Now, as good as I thought I was, having graduated from Booker T. Washington with honors, when I got to Howard, when they administer reading tests, I was deficient in reading. But Howard did not give up on me. Howard put me through a 6-week reading course. And I was able, as a result of that help, and with the help of many great professors at Howard, we had at Howard professors who, in philosophy, Mr. Bannerman, we had E. Franklin Frazier. I don't know if you heard of the publication Black Bourgeoisie, published in 1957. He taught sociology, and I was one of his students there. Dr. Holmes, a professor of government, was kind enough to ask me to take an honors course, which he administered, and I was the only student. That was fun. Each week I'd have at least one book to report to him that he had assigned to me, and he would grade me. But all of these people gave me encouragement, and I ended up, as was articulated a few minutes ago, I ended up graduating from Howard, magna cum laude, and Phi Beta Kappa. That's a great transition from a deficiency in reading to graduating with honors, magna cum laude, and Phi Beta Kappa. What a transition.
What a transition indeed. The state of North Carolina was going through its own transition in the 1950s and early 1960s. The University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill, its law school, desegregated in 1951. Duke desegregates 1961, right? So the private schools often in North Carolina were after public schools in terms of desegregation. Dean Jack Laddie comes and recruits you to take this historic step. Talk about that moment, meeting Dean Laddie.
Before I do that, though, I want the audience to understand where I was. Graduating from Howard with honors, and I had no money. I had a great academic record, but I had no plans whatsoever because I had no money as to what my next step would be. I had not applied to a single law school, although my interest in law was intense. In the spring of '61, in comes this New England grandfatherly type man who had previously, without my knowledge, of course, he had contacted the dean of Howard University, Dean Blackburn, And he asked Dean Blackburn to recommend 2 students who Dean Blackburn thought would be appropriate candidates temperamentally and academically to consider what he thought Dean Blackburn was a challenge in going to Duke Law School. Well, when I was contacted, there was no question at all, and as to whether or not I would want to meet with this man. And I did meet with him along with one other student at Howard at that time. He was from New York, Al, and we were friends. Al said, I want nothing to do with Duke. Because he, as I was, for a moment anyway, he was concerned. This is 1961. The Civil Rights Act had not been passed. There was great violence in the South against civil rights workers and people who were trying to advance the right to vote. It was a terrible time. Absolutely. My grandkids, when I talk to them about that, they just say, Poppy, you're exaggerating. No, it was bad. It was bad. People were being murdered, clubbed. Violence was being applied to many of us, particularly in the South. So I've lost the train of thought, but
the dean recruiting you.
Dean Laddie came and he interviewed me, and he really. I think he decided that I was a good candidate, apparently, and he asked me if I would be willing to do this. He said, David, I think we can do this. We can do this. I think you're capable of doing it. My family was absolutely opposed. Every member of my family said, look, we don't want to lose you that way. Because they thought that coming to North Carolina at that time, in 1961, was a risk to my life. But I instinctively knew better. I knew there were risks. It was a journey, it was a journey that I was willing to take. And I'm glad I took it. But I like to say, in the period since I've graduated from Duke and I've had a really good career, I like to say there's nothing that I did in accepting the opportunity to attend a first-rate law school than any other American boy would have done. Who would turn down a quality education at a university with the reputation of Duke University? Who would do that? Unless, they had other options, of course. But who would say, I'm sure there's no one in this audience would have turned down an opportunity like that, particularly given the fact that I had no other. And at one point, when I finished at Howard in 61, I thought of taking a break, getting a job, saving some money, and then applying to law school. But in walks this man. I often say God is in the picture, always. In walks this man and offers me something that I could not dream of. So I had to say no, and I'm glad I did.
Yeah. Your admission to Duke Law was covered by many national media outlets. So the Black press, the Afro-American, the New York Amsterdam, but also mainstream newspapers as well. The New York Times, we've shown, and the research covered your admission as well. But perhaps the most moving media engagement with your admission came from the Carolina Times, Durham's African-American newspaper. I want to read just from a March 18th, 1961 editorial. The editorial reads in part, admission of Negroes to Duke University should bring great solace to the older citizens of the race, many of whom worked in the tobacco factories in the early days for starvation wages, which resulted in the Duke families being able to build up their vast fortune. There are many old-timers that are still living in Durham who can recall very vividly accounts of their parents' employment in the local tobacco plant at wages as low as $5 per month and a sack of meal. Thus, when the first Negroes are admitted to Duke next September, it is our hope that they will take pride in the fact that many of their parents worked and prayed for a better day, when future generations of the race would benefit from the fruits of their labor. Now that day has arrived. It is also our hope that all of those who are introduced to the university will strive to make the most of it. Pretty weighty stuff. Did you feel the pressure to represent a race of people? How did you negotiate that? What were your sort of hopes and thoughts, perhaps fears even? The pressure to represent a race of people, what does that mean to you?
You know, I hope I'm communicating this effectively. But the opportunity to study law was an opportunity that I embraced wholeheartedly. I really didn't feel that I was representative, although I know in fact that I was. Yeah. But I didn't feel that pressure, that kind of pressure. I knew that I had to be competitive, and I believe I was. The 3 years that I spent in law school, I think I gave it my all, as most of my colleagues at that time did. We were all busy. Okay? Nobody had time to really think about, there's a black man in a dormitory down the hall. I recall, though, in the dormitory that I lived in, there was one guy, we would pretty much take showers at the same time, but he'll see what shower I used, and he wouldn't use that shower. He would go into another shower. But that was an extraordinarily rare type of incident. But I really had never come across that kind of comment about the integration of Duke Law School. But one thing I want to say is, as I studied here for 3 years, the African American workers here, and Walter would testify to this if he were here, I could see in their eyes as I walked to my classroom in the old quadrangle, the pride that these people had in my presence. And I knew that I would never let them down. In times that I wanted to go and do something else, I stayed and studied. I didn't feel necessarily the pressure of in terms of somebody harming me or anything. But I wanted to be competitive. Howard had taught me how to be competitive, and I was competitive. And I thank God for that. Thank you. I'm sorry for standing.
You mentioned Walter Johnson, graduate of North Carolina A&T, was with you as you enrolled here at Duke Law School. Can you talk about your relationship with him? You were traveling a similar path, the same path.
Absolutely. Walter and I were good friends. Occasionally, Walter would invite me to go to Greensboro on the weekend with him, his family. I met his family. I met his father when his father worked for the state of North Carolina, he would drop in at the law school and take us to lunch or something. We were friends, but we were both busy people when we were in law school. So we didn't, necessarily see each other each day because he was busy, I was busy. Walter was not only a gifted student, but he was also an athlete, and he was more interactive with the colleagues in the law school than I was. I was a little more reserved, but that's okay. We just had different personalities. I wish that Walter could witness what Duke has done since we left this institution. I take this opportunity to say that I'm moved every time I come here, because when I was here, the only other African American people that I saw were people who worked here. And when I walked through the campus last March when I was here for my class reunion, to see the black sorority and the black fraternities and the total presence of African American students is just remarkable. It has enhanced Duke's reputation worldwide, I believe. I think this institution has grown, particularly the law school, as well as, of course, the general institution. And I'm so proud that I had a bit role in that process.
Are there any favorite moments from your time at law school? Obviously, you were busy. Any favorite classes or experiences?
Oh, boy. So therein lies the tale. I had some magnificent professors in the law school, people that you folk would not know, not even the administrators, but Douglas Maggs, who was a part of the Roosevelt administration, taught torts. And he was one hell of a professor. He would bang the table to make sure that principle of law was drilled into us. I mean, we all could have been taught lawyers based on the experience that we had with Douglas Maggs. I remember Brian Bullock, who taught real estate, a thoroughbred North Carolinian who made it clear to me that he was not happy with my presence. He said to me, when you see a train coming, you get out of the way. And he was not, he was going along with the program, but that was not his decision. That did not deter me. In fact, it really gave me a lot of motivation, because he was, in a sense, admitting that he had lost the battle at Duke. I'm sorry.
No. Let's talk about summers. You spent 2 summers working for the U.S. Commission on Civil Rights at just another pivotal moment in American history. Can you talk about your summer experiences?
Yes, the Civil Rights Commission was an important engine of information for the nation. It was a part of the legislation that was designed to develop studies of patterns of discrimination throughout the country. And I worked as an associate in doing research on one of the projects I recall that I had for the entire summer was discrimination in the real estate industry. And that was very exciting. I met some wonderful lawyers there, civil rights lawyers there, and that was a wonderful experience. And I might add that in the summer of '63, I'm fortunate enough to be one person who can say, in living color, I might add, that I attended the March on Washington and heard the I Have a Dream speech. My mother wrote me a 10-page letter asking me not to go because she thought there would be violence. There was no violence. It was a wonderful experience. It was hot, but it was an epic moment in American history to see this sea of people voicing their concern about progress that, as we look back, was just inevitable because we're reaping the blessings of the results of demonstrations of that kind throughout the nation.
How did those moments really impact you in terms of your thinking as a lawyer about sort of the possibilities of change and the role of lawyers in change?
Can I share a story?
Sure.
About the importance of lawyers in our society. When I applied for the Florida bar in must be 1962, I had been told by lawyers in my in my community that the Florida bar was hostile to applications by African Americans. But when I applied for the bar, they asked me to provide anything that I had written, particularly articles that I had written while I was at Howard, where I founded a magazine called The Promethean. Promethean was the Greek god who brought light, And I was trying, in my own way, bring light to Howard. Little me, bringing light to Howard. But the authors in the publication that I founded were professors as well as students. So it was a really great collaboration. But I lost my train of thought again.
Florida bar.
Yes, the Florida bar said to me after seeing the article that I had written on Cuba, I thought Castro was a Democrat. So did the U.S. State Department. So when they asked me, they said, Robinson, you have to come to Tallahassee. Now, I'm studying like crazy at Duke Law School. I have to catch a bus to go to Tallahassee for a hearing. Before I left, I talked with Floyd McKissick. I don't know if any of you know Floyd McKissick. I know you know him, Lois, and I know you knew him. Floyd McKissick befriended me when I was a student at Duke. And, you know, he had me over for dinner, and I met his family and what have you. He said, David, if you have any trouble, we're going to back you up. And Floyd McKissick was a national figure. He's a national lawyer in the civil rights area and a very effective and prominent lawyer here in North Carolina. So when I went to take this interview, or whatever they called it, a hearing, they called it a hearing, suspecting that I was a communist, The executive secretary of the bar met me at the door. She said, Mr. Robbins, she was an elderly white lady, very polite, soft-spoken. She said to me in a little anteroom, she said, look, I know all the correspondence you've had with the Florida bar. These guys just want to hear you concede that you're a communist. I know you're not going to do that, but just bear with them and answer the questions, because she knew that I think she suspected that I knew how to defend myself, but I was also prepared to fight for admission to take the bar. I was determined to do that. But when I went in there and I used the approach after I talked to her, I moderated my approach. I went in a little more conciliatory and said to them, look, if you're going to bar me from taking, you're going to bar me, excuse my, from taking the bar, you have to understand the fact that the United States State Department also had similar views as mine, and it would be unfair for you to do that. Apparently that argument worked, because the people who really wanted to deny me were outvoted, and I was permitted to take the exam and passed it, thank God. It's a funny story.
You mentioned graduating before the Civil Rights Act of 1964. There's no Title VII, no EEOC. And even after the passage of the act, there were many barriers. You talked about one of the barriers to practicing as an attorney. What were some of the early barriers that you confronted, and how did you navigate some of these barriers? How did you open doors even for those who followed you?
Well, one of the reasons that, and I don't think I fully answered one of your earlier questions, one of the reasons I wanted to be a lawyer is because lawyers can make a difference in society. And you, as students of the law, I'm sure are aware of that. We make a difference. I brought with me a copy of the Constitution. This country is predicated on the rule of law. When we lose that, we all lose our freedom. We all lose our freedom. I knew from a teenager that I really wanted to practice law. But in order to do so, as an African American in the United States, I had to make sure that I had a good record, in the sense that I didn't have a criminal record. Because if you had a criminal record, it knocks you out of a lot of things. And I certainly would not have been able to take the Florida bar. I probably wouldn't have, been able to advance as I did at Howard or any other institution. But I chose the law because I know that I could do it, hopefully, beyond regular retirement age. I could work as a lawyer as long as I could read, walk, and talk. And that has proved so accurate, because I can say now that I've been a member of the Florida and New York bar for more than 6 decades. And I practice all types of law, and it has brought such satisfaction. I was looking before I came here. I spent in private practice at Xerox, I spent 23 years protecting the interests of a Fortune 500 company. And if I have to say so myself, I was pretty good at it. When I left Xerox and returned home, I went into state government as general counsel to the court system of Miami-Dade County. So I've had private practice, I've had state practice, and of course, the Civil Rights Commission, worked in that. But for the last 3 decades, since my retirement from the Florida court system, I've received the greatest satisfaction just doing pro bono work in an underserved community in South Miami, Florida. Mm-hmm. So in my view, I've reached an Aristotelian balance. And I'm proud to be able to share that with you. I really am.
One last question before we open it up to the audience.
Oh, we just got started.
Many accomplishments, but for all of your accomplishments, you are really a modest person, but you desegregated this institution. How should we think about your story, your legacy? What's the sort of takeaway for us today?
I think I get, Walt and I get a little too much credit for that. Because if Duke had decided Duke was within its rights, I could stand to say this. I hope you don't chase me out of here. But Duke had a right as a private institution to admit whomever they pleased. And it could have made the decision in 1941. So I think of the people who were not able to study at Duke. I think of that a lot. How many lawyers who probably had greater assets than I possess could have come through these halls and made contributions to this institution and to society, had Duke the moral courage to say, look, our policy of exclusion is not fair. But it did muster that courage in '61, for which I'm grateful, and I thank you all.
We know that you have class at, many of you at 2 o'clock, so we want to, though, just take several questions from the audience. Just raise your hand and we will call on you. There's a hand here.
Thank you for your time and thank you for your courage. Recently, there have just been a lot of conversations among, I guess, diverse law students in terms of this tension of most of us at Duke and at T14 schools are going into these prestigious law firm jobs, and we're seeing, as you stated, an attack on the rule of law and on DEI broadly. And I think that's brought like a tension or an internal confusion between like, basically how far are you willing to go for that big law kind of check or that upward mobility? And also a frustration among students feeling like, what can we do as a collective? What can we do in terms of mobilizing, combating apathy within the group, things like that. And it's just led to just a lot of confusion and frustration. I don't know if you have any thoughts or advice or opinions either way on what's happening in this moment.
Well, I think it's important for each of us to follow our dreams. If we want to pursue the money, pursue the money. That's an American given. But I think you can pursue the money and also make contributions to our society that should be the route that we all follow. If you seek a plum corporate job, which I did, but you can still do good. There's pro bono work, a lot of pro bono work that could be done. There are many underserved communities in this nation, believe me. They need your help. So I think you can achieve both objectives. Get rich and give back. That's my philosophy. I didn't get rich, though.
Other questions? Yeah.
What were the classrooms like when you were here? When I started here in '79, Francis Pascal made students stand up, and he would call on them and so forth. And you mentioned that one fact you remember was banging on things. Could you tell us a little bit about what the classrooms were like?
Well, now, my class was 85 people. 85 people. That was like, a small group. And there was an intimacy between the professors and the lecturers. But we had a variety of different, you had old, you had what I called seasoned North Carolinians like Robinson Everett, who was just a terrific professor. He was terrific. And you had a younger group of people like Mel Shum, who was around when I was around, and we just had a great group of people. All of our professors were open to our wandering into their office, asking questions after class. So it was just a totally different scene because there was so few of us. Now, in my class of '85, about 50% of them were Phi Beta Kappa from their respective colleges, and all of them were honor graduates from their respective schools. So competition was really fierce. And we were all busy. At one point, the city of Atlanta had a slogan said, "There's a city too busy to hate." So we were all busy. We didn't have time to bicker about trivial matters. But it was one of the best experiences of my life was to be here at Duke, studying, competing, arguing, being told I was wrong, but that's the way it is. That's the way it should be. I think I benefited enormously from the experience.
Yeah.
Mr. Robinson, you mentioned being at the March on Washington. You came to Duke 7 years after Brown versus the Board of Education. You talked about the importance of Social Security. Could you talk about your journey in this moment in time where we're seeing pushback against civil rights initiatives, attacks on Social Security, questions about DEI? How might your journey and your experience help us to navigate the space in which we find ourselves today?
That is a tall question. That's a tall question. But Dr. King would say that progress simply is inevitable. That's unfortunate to some people. But you cannot reverse the impact that we collectively have achieved over the last maybe 50 to 60 years. No administration is going to be able to reverse that. We have, I think, progress to a point where progress is simply not reversible. We might be in for a few years of turbulence, chaos, but we will resist, I hope. I think the rule of law will prevail in this country. I really believe that. But I think it's up to each of us to form our own resistance. That's my key word. I say to young people daily, resistance. Write letters. Use your cell phones for something positive. It's important. It really is important. This effort to reverse progress, we've seen it before. We've seen it before. We've seen it in 1877. Of course, we weren't here, but we've seen it before. We saw parts of it in previous administrations in recent times. It never succeeds. It never succeeds. Because reversal of progress is just temporary. The rule of law will prevail in this country. I am fully confident of that. It would take, it will take 10 election terms to overturn the progress that this nation has achieved in the last 60 years. I'm fully confident again of that. I hope that answers your question. It's a heavy question. Thank you for it.
We can take one last question. Yeah.
I just wanted to first thank you for bestowing upon us all of your esteem, information, and insight. I am a Durham native, so I'm just curious, during your time at Duke, what places did you go to in Durham while you were there? Did you have opportunities to collaborate with law students at North Carolina Central University?
In fact, there was, you had an earlier question in that vein. My life was this campus. That was my life. There were occasions where Walter and I would be invited into the community at a church or some event, which we were happy to do. Walter had a car, I didn't. So we would attend, but we did not have any continuing, we didn't have time. You know, Walter was as serious a student as I was. You know, we were busy studying the law, preparing for MAGS, okay? Douglas MAGS and the rest of our professors. And I'm happy to say that Walter's career was a remarkable lawyer, and I just wish he were here with me today. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Giovanni Martinez, Senior Lecturer Fellow and the Executive Director for the Center on Law, Race, and Policy. I am thrilled and honored to be here and to witness this and this rich piece of history, part of history. I want to acknowledge just briefly as we wrap up our collaborators to pull off today's event. Of course, the Duke Centennial Committee for highlighting this notable event as a Duke Centennial event. our Duke DEI, Duke Law DEI Committee, who was hands-on, and of course, the Duke Law Black Law Students Association also. So thank you. Mr. Robinson, you are living history. And apropos, you are Duke history. Thank you for your leadership, your courage, your willingness to weather the night for the joy and celebration that came with today's morning. Thank you. It's only fitting that Duke University and the Centennial Committee acknowledge today's conversation as a part of Duke's Centennial celebration because of what you brought. And although you may not acknowledge it, you changed the course and the trajectory, and you were a part of that change in your own right and in your own form of resistance, as you said today. Thank you. So please accept a small token of our appreciation. It wouldn't be right if we didn't acknowledge that you are proudly Duke alumni. And of course, you know, there are other goodies in here, but of course, you are through and through Duke Law.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
With that, ladies and gentlemen, thank you all for joining us today, for being a part of this moment in history that we could take and acknowledge and honor Mr. Robinson in this fashion. Your presence is important, and of course, the presence of Mr. Robinson in the life of Duke Law and Duke University is important. Please have a wonderful rest of your day. Thank you.